So it's going to send two things to us. It's going to send the object that created the event, and then it will give us additional arguments that we can take a look at. And one of those arguments will be something that will actually print off the screen. Now, because it's generated code, it adds this throw new not implemented exception. Let's go ahead and get rid of that because we don't need it right now. Instead, let's do this. Let's go console.writeLine. And then inside of here, we will do handle the timer 1 event. And then I'm going to put in the hour, minute, second, and millisecond when the event was signaled, or when the event was raised. So we're going to use the signal time. All right. So the next thing we'll need to do, now that we've wired up our event to occur whenever the timer elapses after 1,000 milliseconds, now what we'll do is simply go timer.start, and we'll just keep running until somebody hits the console.read line and hits enter on the keyboard, and then we'll go timer.stop, and then we'll just exit out of the program. All right, so let's see how this works. Run the application. All right, and so you can see every second, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, we are hitting our handle the timer 1 event. Now what I can also do is wire up additional event handlers. In fact, I can have 2, 5, 10 different event handlers that say, hey, let me know too whenever you raise. All right, not just that guy, I want to know too. So you can add multiple event handlers for every single event. And to demonstrate this, let's just do this. Add handler timer.elapsed. And this time we'll go address of module 1 dot handle the timer 2. I'll hit control period on the keyboard to generate the method handle the timer 2, and it adds it right here. And I'll just copy what we did here and I'll paste it here. Except I'm going to rename this so we can clearly see it, handle the timer 2. So let's run it, and now we're going to get every second we will get 2 entries. 52, 53, 54, 55, 56 for handle the timer 1 and 2. And we could keep adding additional handlers for the elapsed event of the timer if we wanted to. Now, what I can also do, which is kind of interesting, here, let me write this. Console.writeLine, whoops, writeLine, press enter to stop handling both, or stop raising, or stop, handling the event twice. All right, we'll just say that. And then here what I'll do is just go timer.start and console.readline and timer.stop. And then in between here what I'll do is do this. Instead of add handler, we'll remove, remove handler timer.elapsed, and this will do the exact opposite. This will say, hey, I have this method that we're currently calling whenever we hit the elapse. I want to stop calling it. Just unregister it, and it's no longer going to be used as a handler for our elapsed event. So here, let's watch how this works. So I can press enter to stop handling the event twice, and right now I'm adding 2 entries every second. So I'll hit enter, and now we're back to only handling the event once. Okay. All right, so I say all of that to say this. I wanted to show you how to respond to events, how events work, and the various parts of an event. A object will declare and raise an event, and then we as developers can attach our code or add handlers to the various events that are raised by objects, and then write any custom code that we want to in response to those events. We can also say, no longer do I want my handler to handle that event. Instead, I just want to remove it so it's no longer listening for that event. All right. So events are central to every type of app that you'll build. I think I said that already. And to demonstrate this, what I want to do is build a really simple Hello World application using the Windows Presentation Foundation API to build Windows applications. So let's do this. I'm going to go File, New, Project, and we're just going to call this WPF Events. I'm going to select a WPF application. That's important, all right? And I'm going to call this WPF Events. All righty. And what I want to do, and I'm not really prepared to talk about WPF. There will be entire courses on Microsoft Virtual Academy that will explain what you need to know about it. But all I really want to do here is just drag and drop a button, and then drag and drop a label, or actually a text block. That would be better. Let's put a text block right below it. Okay. I'm going to select the button, and I might change its content and say, click me. All right. And then in the text block, I might change the text and remove it, just make it empty by default, but I want to rename it to my text block, and I'll rename the button as well to my button, something memorable. All right. All right. Now the next thing that I want to do is come over here to the properties window, and I want to make sure that I have the button selected on the design surface that I dragged and dropped from my toolbox. And here I'm going to select the little electric lightning bolts thingy over here on the right hand side, and this will show me all the available events for an object. In this case, make sure it says my button, type button, and then you'll see all of the events that this button can handle. You see, wow, there's a ton of events. Yeah, many of these you'll probably never ever need or use, but the one that you'll always use is the click event. So what I'm going to do is just inside of this little white area here, I'm going to double click. And when I do, notice that it adds a my button underscore click event. All right, and here I could write my label, or my text block, in fact, sorry, dot text equals hello world. And so let's run the application. And we're just going to click the Click Me button, and notice it says Hello World. Now, you might say, well, this wasn't very satisfying because I don't see anything similar to what we did previously. Where did it actually wire up the relationship between the button and the click event my button underscore click? Well, let's do this. I'm just going to go and select the form itself. So the entire window, all right, just the entire visual area. In fact, I'm going to make sure to select just outside of that, because if you select just the inner part, it'll be a grid that's used for layout purposes. I want to select just outside of it and make sure that the word window is visible. Then I want to go down to initialized, and I want to make sure to double click it so it creates this window initialized handler. And then what I'm going to do inside of there is go ahead and do add handler my button dot click comma address of, and then we're going to go main window dot, and we'll give it a name, handle the event one, just like we called it before. I'm going to hit Control period on my keyboard and select generate the method handle the event one. All right, and we'll have to do something a little bit funky here, so just stick with me. Private shared, let's just call this result string. All right, and then here I'm going to need to put set result equals string.format, and then here we'll go happened at, and then HH, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds, and we'll pass in date.now. All right, let's see if that works. And then what I'll do is show the result in here. All right, let's see if that works. All right, and you can see it works. Now, the first time you click it, nothing will happen because the very first time you click it, the result will be an empty string, but then every subsequent time, the handle the event 1 will have fired second, and it will be populated with values, okay? Now, what we could do is just make it happen one time, and then we could do something like this: remove handler, my button click, address of module 1, or I'm sorry, main window dot handle the event 1. See if that'll work. It doesn't work. We'll have to put that someplace else. Maybe here after the very first time. There we go. That should work. So let's run it. And now the first time we click it, nothing happens. The second time we click it, nothing happens. But then every subsequent time, it does not change the date, or rather the time. Why? Because after we run through this block of code once, we've removed this handler, so it never updates the string result. Okay? So hopefully that's as clear as mud. There are some things there. Hopefully, I know that it probably didn't make a lot of sense with regards to dragging and dropping items and modifying them and using the properties window. But at a high level, just understand that everything in .NET is event driven. And so events are what move the action of the application forward. And here we were just handling an event that's wired up automatically for us through the beauty of the Visual Studio IDE, but we can take control of adding and removing events to, or event handlers to specific events ourselves by using the add handler and remove handler keywords and pointing them to the address of methods that we implement in our source code. All right. So hopefully that's the one of the main takeaways. The main takeaway really is that events are everywhere you look, and that if you can dream up an action that you want your application to respond to, your first thought should be, what event should the application be responding to? What should I be handling as the developer? And then you do your research at MSDN, Microsoft.com to find the specific events for the given objects that you have in your web page or on your Windows form, and then you implement those using techniques that I demonstrated here. Okay. So that pretty much wraps up all of the instruction content. I'll have a couple of closing words in the next video, and then you'll be finished. So congratulations. We'll see you in that next video. Thank you. Hey, congratulations. You did it. You're awesome. It's a huge accomplishment to make it all the way to the end of one of these long-form video courses. And so it's a huge accomplishment, a feather in your cap. Congratulations. You know, whenever I look at the views for a course that I've created, typically see the first 2 or 3 videos have an enormous number of views, and then it starts to drop off rapidly from there. And I used to be concerned about that, but the good folks in Microsoft Virtual Academy assured me that that happens with every course. And I believe that everybody has the best of intention to follow through and see something to the end, but then life gets in the way. And there's distractions and changes in priority, that will interrupt even the best of intentions and completely halt progress. But that's not you. You are able to push it all the way to the end, and now you're well on your way to mastering Visual Basic, or at least learning more about Visual Basic from this point. Maybe it's learning more about .NET in general, or picking a user interface technology, whether it be for web or Windows applications, learning how to access data from databases using .NET's data access APIs, and more. And I have a pretty strong feeling that before long you'll be ready to build your own applications, whether for yourself or for a company that you work for. But whatever the case might be, congratulations, you earned it. But let me encourage you to not stop there. Keep pushing forward. You have the momentum. Keep taking daily baby steps. Daily progress, no matter how insignificant it might seem, is how you make real improvements in your life and how you add skills in your skill set. There's a little sign that I have in my closet over here. It just reminds me of this fact. It says, what you do every day matters more than what you do once in a while. So please take that to heart and just make sure every day you get your hands dirty in the code and you write some code every single day. But this was a great first step. You've taken a great step in the right direction, and I'm proud of you, and you did a great job. So in this last video lesson, I want to wrap up the series and provide a few suggestions about really what the next logical steps for you are as you learn more about .NET from this point on. So I want to assure you that some of the ideas that I presented in this course, especially the more advanced concepts that I hinted at or I briefly discussed, like object-oriented programming, working with collections, LINQ, some of those sorts of things, they could require weeks or months of thought work before your mind is really able to truly digest them. I know I personally spent many hours just staring at the wall, thinking about something that I'm trying to wrap my head around. The mind needs quiet time to reflect, and you need to put yourself in a position to succeed by giving your mind time to discover, to ask the right questions, to allow those little neurons to make those vital connections inside of your noggin. So honestly, there are things that I learned about 10 years ago that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. That's the nature of this business and the complexity of software development. It's easy and it's as hard as you want it to be. So many times I often find myself needing to read many different blogs and books and watch many different videos and see what they have to say about a given topic before it really starts to finally resonate with me. I like to hear it from many different authors, not just one. How I can use a particular technology, how I can apply that technology. Each author talks or writes about a given topic, saying things in a slightly different way, and sometimes that finally unlocks the idea for me in my mind. But ultimately, I hope you realize that you don't really need to know every single thing there is to know about Visual Basic or about programming or .NET in order to be productive today, right now. You don't have to be an expert first to write software and to do something meaningful. I mean, many of the websites and the applications that you see that were, you hear the stories about kids starting these in college, whether it be Facebook or something else. They didn't have all the skills they needed before they started off. They acquired those skills as they went along. So I encourage you to do the same sort of thing. In fact, some concepts may only make sense to you after you have more experience, after you've made some mistakes. And a good example of that's object-oriented programming. You really never know how useful that becomes until you've seen one or two or three projects collapse under their own weight, and you think, there's got to be a better way. I've been approaching this all wrong. So at this point, you have a good basic knowledge of Visual Basic, the programming language, but there's still a lot of opportunity to practice and to grow from here. So no matter what type of applications that you'll probably wind up building, there are other few fundamental ideas that you really need to become familiar with to be productive as a software developer. First of all, you're probably going to want to learn how to work with relational databases like SQL Server. You should learn how to access data that's been stored in a database, how to add or create tables and rows to those tables, how to design tables correctly. You'll also want to learn some of the visual tools that are available to you in Visual Studio that can help you to drag and drop and configure your settings and selections for your data access and your database. And then you're going to want to quickly grow past that and rely less on the visual designers, both for user interfaces, for databases, for the data access, and grow past that and rely less on the visual designers in Visual Studio. However, those are a great crutch as you're getting started. The next thing that you're going to want to do is choose a presentation technology to master. So you have no lack of options, fortunately or unfortunately, depending how you look at it, including ASP.NET Web Forms and ASP.NET MVC. Core MVC, the latest version of that framework for building web applications. Then on the desktop side, there are Windows Forms, which is an older technology, and then there's WPF, which is a newer technology. Of course, you could learn the Universal Windows Platform, which is the newest API for building Windows Store applications. And then there's also tools that are available to you that allow you to write Visual Basic or C# and create applications for many different platforms, like Xamarin, for example, to create cross-platform apps that will run on iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. If you're not sure, let me suggest that at the very least, in my opinion, you should learn HTML and CSS and JavaScript. In the past, those have traditionally been considered web technologies. However, I think you're going to see increasingly that there is this convergence between those two things, where you can write web apps that can be compiled into mobile apps, or you can write HTML that can be used as desktop applications. So I would encourage you, even if you don't plan on doing formal web development for a career, you still need to know the lingua franca of the internet, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I've created several fundamental series on Microsoft's Channel 9, and I believe they're also available on Microsoft Virtual Academy for each of those topics, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and so on. And then I recommend you learn, you get deeper into how to build applications the right way. And so you look at topics related to application architecture, particularly how do you format or how do you separate the concerns of your application, splitting up your code into layers of responsibility, and why you would even want to do something like that. When you take the time to learn how to architect your applications correctly, you're hoping to split up your code into logical layers of responsibility that will help you withstand the impact of change on the software system. So change can come from many different places as you're building software, whether it be from changing business requirements, changes in technology, changes from defects in software and required bug fixes and so on. But in each case, you can mitigate the impact of change, of making changes in your software, in your code, by encapsulating responsibilities behind well-established APIs. It's just a next step beyond some of the things that we talked about regarding encapsulation earlier in this course. I spent a lot of time thinking and talking about that on my own website. Oh, there it is right there, DevU. And so I'll have a last plug for that here in just a moment. But from application architecture, you're going to want to learn more about basic software design patterns and tactics and techniques. And so I'm going to give you a list of keywords that you're probably going to want to jot down and add to your to-do list. And frankly, each of these could spawn a whole book or video series. And I've already alluded to object-oriented programming. That's the biggie. There's also object-oriented analysis and design. Obviously, those two go hand in hand. And if you can just get your mind wrapped around that first, that's a huge step in the right direction. But beyond that, you're going to want to learn about the principles and patterns that guide you towards writing code in an object-oriented fashion. So there's a set of principles known by the acronym SOLID, S-O-L-I-D, which are a set of 5 principles that help you realize the promise of object-oriented programming in your applications. You're also going to want to learn about workflow. So specifically, you're going to want to learn about working in a team environment with other software developers, sharing code, using a source code repository, using a tool called Git or Visual Studio Online. I think they call it Visual Studio Team Services now. You're definitely going to want to learn about unit tests, building unit tests. These are tiny little code-based tests that are continually testing your code to make sure that what you wrote today, a month from now, is still working as you make changes to your code. And some people have even gone as far to say that you should be writing those tests first before you actually write the production code to satisfy those tests. That's called test-driven development, or TDD. You'll see it, that acronym sometimes. You're going to want to learn about agile project management, agile software development techniques, defining requirements in something called user stories, playing planning poker in order to determine the amount of effort required for given tasks in a software iteration. All right, using agile boards to manage tasks between software developers, Kanban boards, Kanban boards. And you're going to want to learn about the nature of iterative development. You want to learn about developing a spike of functionality all the way through the layers of the system, an architectural spike that will then help all the members of your team understand more about the intended architecture, and so that you can all speak the same language as you're beginning to work on a project together. So I've given you probably a couple of dozen terms there that you could probably spend a year or two just looking up those and learning more about them. And fortunately, you don't have to know it all to get started. It's only in the last few years that I've even learned some of those terms, and I've been doing this for about 20 years now. So unfortunately, there's so much to learn, there's so little time, and you just have to decide to either go deep or go broad. My advice to you is to go deep and learn as much as you can about one single platform and be an expert in that platform. And Microsoft's a pretty safe bet because they've been around for a while. They're continually tearing apart and rebuilding their frameworks to keep them modern and relevant. And they have so many desktop installs. Their server technology, their cloud-based technology, their web-based technologies, they're all state-of-the-art. So again, if you want to bet your career on Microsoft, that's a pretty safe bet. Now, again, so much to learn, so little time. It's a challenge for everybody. You have to really commit and make your full-time job the job of learning. I've had friends at Microsoft who have confided in me that it's a challenge for them, just like everybody else. Nobody just knows all of this stuff automatically because it keeps evolving and new ideas keep being thrown into the arena of ideas. But this is what makes software development so fun and so challenging. Also a little daunting, but at least you'll never get bored as a software developer. You might get burnt out, but you won't get bored. And there's a bunch of great resources on the internet, not the least of which is Microsoft Virtual Academy, also Channel 9, great place to learn as well. However, let me make one final plug. If you're ever interested in learning about C# and more about .NET, more about architectural topics for software developers, more about web-based development, then you'll definitely want to check out my website, Developer University, at http://devview.com. That's designed specifically towards somebody who's a beginner, helping them get up and running as fast as possible. I spend a lot of time pointing out what I feel are the most important topics, the key ideas that you need to master, including homework exercises, interaction with me via Q&A, and even I have a live service where we can chat a couple times a week over GoToWebinar. And so check it out when you have a chance. So as I close, I hope you found this course to be valuable. If there's anything that I can do to help you out, let me know. I'll try. But most of all, I wish you great success in your career. Good luck, and thank you for watching.